Hello people and welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be just a quick sort of time lapse of me building the dragon in Blender, but I'll probably just chat about some stuff. It's a new year, so if you want to mute it, go ahead and just watch it, put some music on. But it's been a bit of a crazy year for me. It's 2013 now. No, it's not. It's 2023. A whole decade behind myself. But yeah, a lot has happened. I been living with my mother, and she's not been real well. Has a lot of medical problems. She had cancer about 7 years ago, and it seems like it's gone now. She's not going to chemo anymore, but that's been a bit of a complicated situation. But yeah, around April, May last year in 2022, she ended up having a stroke, and it was right after we had these massive floods. And we didn't have any flood water here, but we had a lot of water around the house. And the biggest problem was that we had no power for 2 days, and we had no internet for about 3 weeks. And where we are, the phone reception is really bad, so we have to rely on the internet. And when she had the stroke, we had power, but we had no internet, and so I had to drive halfway into town just to be able to ring the ambulance. And then it was really complicated trying to talk to the hospital and, just trying to arrange all of that kind of stuff. And that was really quite complicated, but I didn't even know what had happened at first. I found her on the floor, and I don't know how long she'd been there. She kept saying she landed on the bed and then put herself on the floor when she was trying to get to a wheelie walker, but that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And she didn't have any facial droopage, she didn't have any slurred speech or anything like that, but she did have some weakness in the left side, and she had a really swollen arm from the lymphedema after the cancer. And so I didn't know if it was a problem or not. And it sort of, I sat her up at the table and gave her a meal, and she seemed to be able to use her hands fine, so I was sort of a bit talked into not calling the ambulance at the time, because she's always very reluctant to call them. But when she tried to stand up a few hours later to go to the bathroom, she couldn't physically stand up. And so I called the ambulance at that stage. I'm just like, no, this is no good. I've got to call the ambulance. And they, of course, took it very seriously and rushed here as quickly as they could. And I got back, because I had to drive out halfway into town to be able to call them. And by the time I got back, they arrived literally a minute later. So it was very efficient on their part. And Mum got to hospital, and it turned out that she had had a stroke, and she was completely paralysed on the left side. And so she ended up in hospital, and she was fighting tooth and nail with everybody who was involved, and just being very difficult, and it's been really stressful. And I was having a really hard time and had some very unhealthy coping mechanisms that didn't help. And yeah, it's just been a really long journey, and she's able to walk around now. She's sort of recovered fairly well. But there's been a lot of other health issues, and there's been a lot of mental health issues, and it's sort of got to the stage where I can't really look after her anymore, so I'm in the middle of trying to sort out if we can get help, and just trying to sort my life out. And it's been difficult. My dog died on the morning of New Year's Eve. She was 14. And Mum really found that hard, because she just lived on Mum's bed all the time, and so it was a huge adjustment for that. And it has been really rough. I've had a really rough time, and I'm really trying to build out a life and just start functioning again, because I've been so shut down for so long, and it's been such a nightmare most of my life, and I'm only just starting to find my feet. And it's just, everything is so crazy, but for the first time I'm starting to get a glimpse of hope, of just being able to find something that I can do that I enjoy doing, and just get some independence. It's so hard to explain what it's like to be so shut down and to just not have anything. Now, I've been completely isolated, I've been very controlled, and yeah, it's been crazy. But I think it's gonna start getting better. I really want to try and build up my channel, build up some hobbies, and my biggest motivation is I just want to be a help to people. I want to entertain people. I want to be interesting and understanding, and just help people like me not feel so alone, because I've been very alone and it is really hard getting help. And just listening to people talking, like, um, I've been watching some law tubers, like, um, Law Talk with Mike and Lauren Lumber, and just sort of that whole group. And actually, Rob from Law Talk, not Law Talk, from Lauren Lumber, and Ian Runkle and those people, they've got ADHD. And a lot of the stuff they were talking about was so similar to what I've been doing and how I've been operating. And I'm not saying that I've got ADHD, but it's just really interesting to find people that have got similar situations. And it makes you feel more normal, because when you don't fit into the assumptions of society, you end up feeling really abnormal. And it's just because my mother's been such a bit of a narcissist and always sort of been very controlling of what I do. And I mean, I grew up genuinely believing that everybody hated me and that was just how life was. And so I just got on with things. And I learned not to be susceptible to peer pressure. But at the same time, I was very alone. And I just didn't know how to function. I mean, I'm 37 years old and I'm only just starting to learn how to get organised plumbers to fix the sewage tank, and how to, pay bills and get money and all that kind of stuff, because I've been on a pension most of my life. And I just really don't like feeling like I'm a burden to anybody. Like, even the government, I can't wait until I can be earning enough money that I can pay taxes, as much as that sounds crazy. I just want to feel normal. I want to give back. I've been on the pension most of my life, and I just really want to be able to be in a position where I can give back to the government, give back to the society. And it's just, that's sort of why I started the channel in the end, because it's just outreach, meeting people. I want to build up a community. One of the things I love about the law tubers that I've been watching is there's a whole lot of camaraderie. And that's what I'm really missing, I think. I've been through so much, and I've had so much emotional abuse, and I mean, I've had so many health problems that I can relate to just an extreme amount of stress. I've been living in a constant state of fight or flight almost my entire life. And it's been a bit of a crazy journey as I'm discovering what's going on and how it all fits together, and just the effect that DV can have. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack. But I'm really working hard on building a future, trying to get that hope, trying to have something to live for, because I never had anything to live for. And I've got my two little cats. Absolutely love them. They're gorgeous. Got a ragdoll called Freya, and then I've got like a domestic short hair or some sort of generic breed called Cleo, and I absolutely adore them. I do find it interesting learning about people's stories. You know, we all have a story to tell, and I felt so unimportant and so abnormal and so alone for so long. But I'm starting to see that even though I've never really had a job and I've never really had a life that most people would take for granted, I still have a lot to tell. And I still have my story, my experiences, and what I've learned. And I do try to learn from anything that I can, really. I mean, you learn from other people's mistakes. You learn from almost accidents. And, you know, when I'm driving, I'll be constantly evaluating myself. Am I picking up on things quick enough? Am I reacting to things quick enough? Am I focused on the road? And I've been a very cautious driver and a very safe driver. I've never really had any accidents while driving. I've sort of hit a few things coming in and out of parking spaces, but whatever. My poor car, I need to get that fixed. That's a whole totally different issue. But I've had, you know, a number of times where cars have cut me off and I've had to slam on the brakes just to let them in because they're trying to take a gap that they don't fit into. Or you watch people that are weaving all over the lane and just all over the place. And if you can take something from those almost incidents, you're a lot safer and a lot better off, so that you're not actually having to experience the trauma to be able to learn from it. You know, you don't need to have a car accident to learn that cutting the corner and cutting somebody off is a bad idea. And that's sort of how I've been trying to approach life, of just learning what I can. And I really love getting new perspectives on life and getting a new point of view and learning about different jobs and different people, and just people's life experiences are probably the most fascinating and the most educational content that you can really go into. You know, it's finding out what it's like for somebody who works that job and the hazards that they have to face and the benefits that they get from it, and just that's what I find fascinating anyway. I guess I'm a people person, even though I've been completely isolated and I feel like I'm not very sociable. And it's just, yeah, it's been crazy. And I kept trying. You know, I was studying, when I first left high school, I was studying, I did a year of chemistry, 2 years of maths, and then I was dabbling in physics, but I just wasn't well enough to do it in the end. But like, I did all of this mathematics and chemistry and I still can't add up two numbers without counting it out on my fingers. It's just such a crazy life, and the way that my education worked out, and it's just been a whole thing where I've been trying to learn how to function and do things. And so after I tried to do that and I was kept getting too ill, I had a year off, and then I started doing music, learning how to sing. And I always felt like that I was never very good at it, but again, the stress thing. When I started the year, and I did this each year, each semester, whenever I would start, I would be really singing well and doing well and really sort of functioning and everything. But as the stress increased and as the time went on, I just couldn't function anymore. And I'm really focused on stress and the effects that it has, because I ended up with diabetes, I ended up with high blood pressure and a whole lot of health issues that are all stress related, because it's stress that causes my diabetes to go out of control, not the food. I mean, I'm not saying the food doesn't have any effect, but it's definitely a stress thing for me. And I think I've just been stuck in this fight or flight mode for so long that my body doesn't know how to function properly. And so as I'm reducing the stress, I'm hoping that my functionality will improve and I'll be able to start doing more. And I was, a couple of years ago, I was studying to get into paramedics, and I was really loving it, and it was fascinating. I was enjoying the work, I was enjoying learning. But again, my mother just wouldn't leave it alone. She wouldn't let me go. She had to be a part of everything. She had to take credit for everything. And I just couldn't do it in the end. I just didn't have the capacity to deal with all of her stuff. So I ended up having to give that up, and I was very disappointed about that. But, you learn from it. I've got a stethoscope, I've got my sphygmomanometer thing, the blood pressure cuff. I can take my own blood pressure and I sort of know the basics. I sort of feel like I know enough about medicine to be dangerous, but not enough to actually be any good. And I don't know, I always question myself, I guess, but that's the thing. You just have to learn what you can and try and learn some sort of lessons to get some benefit out of the things that go wrong. And then just don't be too hard on yourself and try and move forward and get stronger, and, not to put pressure on yourself, but just recognize what you've been through and recognize what you've achieved. That's a big thing for me. I tend to be very dismissive of myself and my achievements, and I'm like, well, I can't do anything and I haven't achieved anything, and whereas in reality I've actually done quite a lot, probably. But I'm really loving YouTube and loving making things, and I'm really wanting to learn how to make my own games, so I'm trying to learn 3D modeling, which you can see here. I mean, I'm not very good at it yet, obviously, but I've come a long way already, and you just have to do something. You have to try something. If you're feeling down, something that Rob from Law and Lumber would say all the time, if you're feeling down or if you're feeling stressed out, make something. And it gives you that sense of achievement, and you can see the progression, you can see the improvement. When I first started with Blender, I had no idea what was going on. I was clicking on things, the settings were changing, I didn't know how to fix it, I didn't know how to get it back to how it was. It was really stressful, and I just was almost going to throw it out and not bother with it anymore. But I stuck with it, and I've got back into it. I found some really good tutorials to follow on Skillshare and YouTube and all of that kind of stuff, and it's just a matter of practicing, and don't be afraid of failing. That's something I have to teach myself all the time. I've been so programmed to be the adult, to be the responsible one, to be the one that has to do everything. I mean, my mother sort of raised me to be the one that makes all the decisions and does all of the work, but at the same time, she always undermined what I was capable of and tried to convince me that I needed her because she needed to be validated. That's how she got her validation, and it just sort of always left me in a place where I I just couldn't really function. I always felt like I was under equipped to do anything, and yet I was expected to do everything. And so I'm trying to find a better balance in my life and not take responsibility quite so seriously, and just give myself some freedom to actually feel anything. You know, it's okay if I don't know how to do something. And I'm allowed to make mistakes, I'm allowed to learn. And it's just been a huge journey on just learning how to function. And I've been really enjoying it. The story of the dragon and the flower. When I was younger, we had this fridge magnet that just had this dragon holding a flower or eating a flower, and the caption was, "Don't forget to stop and eat the flowers." And that's sort of just become the joke of my life, and just a motto in a sense of just taking time to stop and relax and have fun and look after yourself. And so that's why I've chosen the whole dragon eating a flower as my avatar. I used to always love dragons, became obsessed with them when I was a teenager. And so I've sort of carried that on. And of course, Spyro the Dragon was my first real game that I had when I was a kid. Used to love that game. Still got it actually. Try and play it at some stage. But it's just learning to be creative, learning to actually appreciate and recognize when you've grown and achieved something. Because I would look at something and I would see all of the flaws and think, like, even this dragon that I'm building here, I could point out all of the things that I don't like about it and how much I hate it. But that's not the point. The point is, I've actually learned something, I've actually made something, and yes, I have a lot of room for improvement and growth, but look at how far I've come. And that's what I'm trying to teach myself. So hopefully 2023 will start improving, because it's not been great so far. But still, when you hit rock bottom, there's plenty of ways to go up and to start growing and getting stronger. And having YouTube and doing all the computer stuff, it's something that I've actually been able to do, which is a massive thing, because with the chronic fatigue, everything was always more complicated. But it's also something that my mother couldn't control. And it's sort of got to the stage where she is losing her control over me, and I'm starting to be able to breathe a bit more. And I'm trying to get her into some kind of care, because she can't really look after herself, and I want to try and make sure she's safe and that she's doing well. And she's going to really fight it, but I think she'll adjust to it. And I sort of feel guilty, but I've got to do what's best for both of us. And so that's sort of the journey that I'm on at the moment, of trying to figure out how to make sure that she's well taken care of and getting the help and support that she needs, because I can't do it anymore. And at the same time, I need some freedom, because she's kept me so controlled for so long. It's been really rough. I mean, when I was 5, bad things happened. She went into damage control, covered it all up, and told me to shut up and don't talk about it. I mean, she didn't quite use those words, but that was the environment that I grew up in. And she just kept me very under lock and key. And so I grew up in a very, quote, sheltered, end quote, life. I grew up in an environment where drinking coffee was forbidden and eating meat was forbidden. And then I found out that she actually ate some meat occasionally. And it was just all for show, and it was all rules and regulations and reputation, and it's just all of that kind of stuff. So I'm still sort of trying to figure out how the real world works. And that's been the journey that I've been on. I've been carrying a heavy burden for a long time, but I'm starting to get a chance to breathe. You know, my analogy of being in the ocean, I'm starting to get above the surface and get some air. And my biggest motivation and my biggest focus at the moment is I just want to make people happy. I want to be a light in the world, so that people aren't as stressed out as I have been. You know, they're not having to deal with all of the problems that it can have. Just being depressed, being really ill, it's very taxing and it weighs on you quite heavily. And I really am motivated to try and bring a light to the world and just make people happier. You know, give them encouragement, give them support as much as I can. I can't do too much because I just don't have the capacity yet, but that's what's really motivating me, and I'm really loving that, and I'm really wanting to focus on more positive things and just building up a community of like-minded people and just somewhere safe for people, because it can be really rough and it can be really hard to explain to people what you're actually going through. Now, because of the way that I was raised, I find it so hard to ask for help And my mother was always very paranoid about telling anybody she was depressed, and she would avoid it and deny it. And, I was left to believe that if you tell people that you're depressed, you're going to get locked up in a mental institution and that they're evil and horrible. And so I was always too scared to actually say anything. But now that I've been reaching out and I've been sort of looking for help, it's not that bad. I mean, the worst that sort of happened is that nobody does anything, which is very different to the threat of being locked away. And, it's just, the world is so different to what she taught me. And I'm really glad that I can learn and grow and not have to live in fear anymore. That's the biggest thing, I think, is just not living in fear. And I want to be able to spread that hope and joy to other people, because most people might have a fairly good, happy life, but there's a lot of people out there that are silently suffering, and it's so hard to get people to understand what that feels like, what that means, and how much it affects your life. But I really think that my life is getting better, and I have a lot more hope for a good future, and I have a lot more resources now. Because that's the thing, it's resourcefulness and having a good support network that really does the most good. You can't do things alone. I've been trying and it just doesn't work. But I think having one of the good things about YouTube is the community that it builds. And I really love seeing people supporting each other and the friendliness, and you get to know people from all around the world, because people are still people at the end of the day. I mean, yes, there are cultural differences, yes, there are different opinions, different views, but we all have the same basic needs. And just being a place of safety, having people who are supportive, and even if they're just asking how your day is, or someone who understands the troubles, or even just something as simple as somebody who shares an interest, and just being able to talk about that interest and just finding that sense of community. I think that's what's really important, particularly for me, because I've been so isolated for so long. I'm just really craving that connection with people. And I really want to be able to brighten people's lives and be a good support and just be a sense of entertainment, or just something positive. That's sort of the goal that I want to try and achieve. And just for my own benefit of just watching myself grow and focusing on how much I've learned and how much I've improved, and just building up a better self-view, because I've been so critical of myself. All I ever see are the flaws. And I never had time to recognise that I have actually done quite a lot. So that's sort of the goal for 2013. Not 13, 2023. But it's just finding that purpose in life, finding that hope, breaking free from the suffocation of depression and insecurity, and just being free, not being controlled by my own fear or by my mother's fear. And I'm getting a bit more support now, I'm getting a bit more help, and I'm able to get help from my mother even though she's been quite traumatizing to me. I came to the conclusion, I don't care how much abuse I've been through, I don't care how much trauma I've been through, I will decide what kind of person I am. I'm not going to let my trauma dictate who I become. And I want to be a kind, happy, supportive, caring kind of person. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And a big part of that is looking after myself and my mental health. And just finding that inner strength and that hope and that motivation and that drive to be able to really look for a future and work towards a good future. You know, it's been a big journey and I've come a long way in the last few years. I mean, 2022 was such a rough roller coaster of a ride. But it is starting to improve. And I really am hopeful and glad that I can start to see my own improvement and growth. And this is why I sort of love the dragon when don't forget to stop and eat the flowers. Because it brings some hope, it brings some playfulness, it lets you be more relaxed and just more fun. You know, you can learn and grow, but you can still have fun. And just taking some time out from life makes all the difference. And that's sort of an insight into my life and where it's going and where it's been and what I've been through and what I'm trying to achieve. I hope that you can understand or at least get an insight into what's happening here, and just even just for myself, getting that snapshot of where I've been and where I'm at the moment, and just sort of a timestamp. It's been really rough, but hopefully things will improve quite a lot. And I'm really starting to get hopeful. I'm starting to get some momentum. I'm putting myself out there more. And I want to be that cheeky, playful, but strong, solid dragon that still has time to stop and eat the flowers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!